If you love Baltimore sports, you'll love WNST.net.
A city and its love affair in the 1950s, the Colts, Baltimore. I think that's one of the things, Michael, that makes Baltimore so unique with sports is that I guess my dad would always say the Orioles and the Colts put Baltimore on the map. Now, that's coming from my dad, the steel worker who lived here for 50 years, died 20 years ago. But he would say, before that, Baltimore was just a place. It was a port. It was a cute little city. It would be no different than Richmond or Harrisburg or Albany or any other town like that. But the pro sports part of it made Baltimore a national hub and a place that the big sports writers, the Howard Cosell's, the Red Barbers, all that they wrote about, that they had to come to. And then, of course, the Preakness was also a huge, huge part of that as well.
We were the 6th or 7th biggest city in America after the war, but we were just stuck on a map between New York and Washington. Just a stop along the way that people saw from the train as they were passing through.
Or the Harbor Tunnel, getting stuck in it in the summer, right?
Well, we didn't have any specific identity. The Orioles and the Colts gave us our identity and made us feel big league. And that's the, they gave us an identity.
So when did you come up with the idea? You could have written this book in 1974. You could have written it in 1996. I mean, why here, why now? And I know in your writing, in the paper, you were always pining in some way for that Baltimore of that era. That's the most special era for you in your lifetime.
Well, let's say I have an affection for it. I mean, I live in the here and now. I live in the present tense, but I know how special. Look, 50 years. What do you think we're going to be talking about 50 years from today? Very few things. That has lingered. And the reason I wrote it was to figure out why 50 years later that is still such a special time and place, and we still treasure those characters. And part of it is that when the Colts left, we had a chance to step back and think about that time and hold on to those memories because they were the only things that we had left. Other towns got on with the present tense because they still had their teams. We didn't. We had a chance to look back and to remember and to really nurture the memories.
Well, the Baltimore Colts, one of the things that I don't want to say is a gift, because dare I say anything that Irsay did was a gift, but it had a finite ending, right? I mean, the Red Sox have no ending. They just keep going on. The Yankees have no ending. The Orioles right now, God, I hope we put an end to whatever this god-awful period is, but they're still here. They're still a living, breathing thing. The Baltimore Colts are dead, and they're never coming back. And because of that, I think there's more of a romanticism about them than there would have been had they stayed here and toiled away and lost for 10 more years. That's and then won again.
And this book is an attempt to figure out what was it that made it such magic. What was it that makes it have a place in our hearts half a century later.
Why these stories? You know, because this is not a huge book. I mean, this is a weekend of reading. It's a little over 200 pages. Culling this thing down and making it size, because I'm just thinking a guy like you who can be loquacious and who can be, has all the stories because you lived it. I mean, it's authentic. That you could have written 3 books like this, right? I mean, how do you cull these stories in as the most significant ones in putting a book together?
Well, how does any writer do it? I mean, you're a writer. You decide what matters. You decide what deserves still to be talked about, and to try to figure out what these stories mean. You know, I had a great time talking to some of the old Colts. I had spoken with a number of them through the years, including Unitas, but also talking to people who were alive back then, who were fans, who were involved in the life of the city, and also had a great time going through the old News Post of 1958.
I got to applaud the News Post. There you go. Where we both got our start, right?
That's right. Well, under John Stedman, and John was my professional godfather.
John was my professional. We're almost like sires, right? Or
That's right. Like my kid brother.
There you go. That's it. Yeah, it's like out of Stedman, it would read the racing form if it was up there.
A lot of guys like us who we broke into the business, and that was the year that John became the sports editor of the News Post, and to read his old columns and to see how attached at the hip he was, and what he knew about.
He was a cheerleader, like me.
What he knew about these guys' lives. You know, the guys on the Colts. He
knew them as people, sure.
He and Chuck Thompson turned it into a secular religion. If you didn't have seats on Sunday, well, you were sitting by the radio or the TV. All neighborhoods quieted down because you had to know what was going on with the Colts.
If you love Baltimore sports, you'll love WNST.net.